What on earth is going on with Disney's Snow White remake? This saga just refuses to die down, and the controversy surrounding it has only grown stronger with time. Ever since the backlash over this film caught fire in late 2023, it's been obvious that Disney realized they were in serious trouble. And not just your usual, everyday kind of trouble, the kind that shakes an entire studio to its core. This isn't just any project, after all. This is a retelling of the very story that built Disney into the empire it is today. The original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was the first ever full-length animated feature film, the movie that set the foundation for everything Disney became. Now, decades later, they've sunk hundreds of millions into a live-action remake, only to watch it crash and burn before it even hit theaters. Their first move: delay the release by an entire year, hoping that a combination of reshoots, PR maneuvers, and strategic silence would somehow put out the fire. But if anything, it only made the flames burn brighter. For months, things were eerily quiet. Disney barely spoke about the film, as if ignoring the controversy would make it go away. But then, out of nowhere, Rachel Zegler, the film's lead actress, reappeared in what many have dubbed her Snow White apology tour. It was impossible not to notice the shift in her tone. This was the same actress who, just months prior, had been tearing the original Snow White to shreds in interviews. She had openly criticized the classic story, dismissed the original prince as weird, and made it clear that she wasn't a fan of the 1937 film. Suddenly, she's all respectful and toned down. She's emphasizing how grateful she is for the opportunity, how she never meant to offend anyone, and how exhausted she is from dealing with the online hate. Now, nobody should have to face death threats or harassment over a movie that's beyond unacceptable, but the change in her messaging was undeniable. It was a clear pivot, a calculated attempt to soften public perception and win back the audience. The question is, did it work? Judging by the reactions, not really. One of the biggest missteps came when she tried to justify the changes to Snow White's character and backstory. She explained that in this new version, Snow White's name isn't about her fair skin at all. Instead, she's named after surviving a snowstorm as a baby. Her parents, the king and queen, supposedly chose the name to represent her resilience. It's an entirely new origin, one that erases the iconic line about her skin being as white as snow. This is where things get really tricky. Snow White's name and appearance have been central to her character for centuries, dating all the way back to the Brothers Grimm fairy tale. Changing that aspect feels like an attempt to sidestep the controversy of casting a Hispanic actress in a role traditionally depicted with fair skin, but instead of resolving the issue, this new explanation just made things even more complicated. Fans who were fine with the casting don't care about the new reasoning, and fans who weren't on board with the change aren't suddenly going to accept it because of a rewritten backstory. In the end, it's a move that pleases no one. This goes beyond the race-swapping debate. The bigger problem is that Disney is taking a beloved story and rewriting it to the point where it's barely recognizable. Time and time again, we've seen that when studios mess with the core of a classic tale, fans push back. Just look at what happened with the live-action Mulan. Disney removed the songs, got rid of beloved characters like Mushu, and stripped away the heart of the story in an attempt to make it more serious and progressive. The result: a movie that didn't resonate with audiences and failed to perform at the box office. And yet, Disney seems determined to keep walking into this kind of backlash, time and time again. Instead of crafting new, original stories with diverse characters that feel organic and authentic, they keep recycling old fairy tales and making changes that feel forced. Why not introduce a brand new princess, one whose background and culture are built into her story from the ground up? Look at a film like Moana, that's a perfect example of how to create a new, diverse character without controversy. Moana's story is rooted in Polynesian culture, and her journey is an original one. There were no pre-existing expectations to fight against, no classic tale to rewrite. Audiences embraced her because her story was authentic, fresh, and compelling. Disney proved they could do it with Moana, yet they continue to insist on reworking old stories instead of creating new ones. This entire Snow White situation is a perfect case study in how not to handle a remake. Disney has had years of warning signs that audiences are growing weary of these live-action adaptations. They've watched films like The Little Mermaid and Mulan struggle to gain traction, and yet, they seem unwilling to change course. There's a lesson here, one that they desperately need to learn before they sink more money into these kinds of projects: respect the original material. That doesn't mean every adaptation has to be a shot-for-shot remake. There's room for updates, for nuance, for adding layers to beloved stories. But when the changes feel like they're being made for the sake of making changes rather than to enhance the story, audiences pick up on it. And when audiences feel like a studio is lecturing them instead of entertaining them, they tune out. It's ironic, really. In their attempt to modernize Snow White, Disney has made her feel more out of touch than ever. They're not making her stronger by erasing the original fairy tale elements, they're just making her a completely different character altogether. And that raises a simple yet crucial question: if this version of Snow White is so different from the original, why even call it Snow White at all? Why not create an entirely new princess, one who embodies the themes they want to explore without carrying the baggage of a classic story that they clearly don't want to fully embrace? This movie was supposed to be a celebration of Disney's legacy. Instead, it's turned into one of their biggest PR disasters in years. Every new piece of information, every attempt at damage control, only seems to make things worse. With the release date still far off, it's hard to say whether Disney will manage to turn things around or if this film is destined to be another high-profile flop. But one thing is certain: audiences aren't easily fooled. They know when a story is being changed for genuine storytelling reasons and when it's being changed out of fear of backlash. And when a studio shows that it doesn't fully believe in its own project, why should anyone else? Have you ever wondered why Disney keeps finding itself at the center of controversy with its live-action remakes? It's like watching a train speeding toward disaster, and this time, Snow White is the one caught in the wreckage. Ever since Backlash erupted in late 2023, it's been clear that Disney knew they were in serious trouble. This isn't just another remake, it's a retelling of the very story that built the Disney empire, and they've already sunk hundreds of millions into it. Their immediate response: delay the release by an entire year and scramble for extensive reshoots in hopes of salvaging what they could. If you've been following this saga, you've likely noticed the sudden reappearance of Rachel Zegler, the film's lead. Many are calling it her Snow White apology tour, a stark contrast from her earlier interviews, where she harshly criticized the original Snow White. Suddenly, her tone has softened, her words more measured, almost as if Disney hit the panic button behind the scenes. But here's where things get even more baffling. In a recent interview, Zegler explained that in this version, Snow White's name comes from surviving a brutal snowstorm as a baby. That's why the king and queen named her Snow White, to symbolize resilience. Now, that might sound poetic on the surface, but let us not forget that the original tale specifically describes Snow White as having skin as white as snow. This drastic shift feels like Disney is trying to sidestep the controversy of casting a Latina actress in a role traditionally portrayed with fair skin. But instead of winning over audiences, this explanation feels awkward and forced. The real problem, whether or not you care about the race swap, this new justification doesn't add anything meaningful. Fans who had no issue with the casting suddenly find this explanation compelling, and those who were against it be convinced to change their minds. It's not just about who plays Snow White, it's about Disney taking a beloved classic and rewriting it to the point where it's nearly unrecognizable. We've seen this before with the live-action Mulan. They removed the music, changed the characters, and altered the story's heart, and the result a film that alienated fans and underperformed at the box office. It's shocking that Disney keeps walking into this same backlash instead of creating brand new stories that could introduce diverse characters organically. Just look at Moana, an entirely new character in an original story that became an instant icon. Encanto gave us the Madrigal family, a vibrant Latinx cast that people adored. These films proved that diversity can be celebrated without rewriting classic fairy tales and stepping on the toes of existing lore. Take Halle Bailey as Ariel in The Little Mermaid. She's immensely talented and had nothing but good intentions stepping into the role, but Disney's decision to race swap instead of crafting an original story for her meant she had to endure an overwhelming wave of online hate. Imagine being a young actress just starting out and suddenly facing a tidal wave of backlash for a decision that wasn't even yours. It's unfair to these actors, who end up carrying the burden of Disney's missteps. This endless cycle of race-swapped remakes only breeds division. Movies should unite people, giving them an escape into something magical. Instead, all we see now are endless debates and social media battles over whether these changes are justified. The truth is, Disney isn't fixing the issue of diversity, it's just creating new problems. If they truly want a Black or Asian princess, why not craft a brand new fairy tale and let her become legendary in her own right? That way, fans won't feel like something sacred is being tampered with, and everyone wins. Back to Snow White. Disney is throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. Rumors suggest the budget has ballooned to a staggering $400 million, not due to jaw-dropping production value, but because of extensive reshoots and an enormous marketing push to salvage what's left. Even if they refilmed the entire movie to perfectly match the 1937 original, it wouldn't be enough. The damage has already been done. The fan base is too fractured, and realistically, this movie has little chance of making a profit. With a budget this bloated, it would need to earn well over $1 billion just to break even, and let's be honest, that's not happening. And here's another major hurdle: there are still months to go before the film's release, which means endless press tours and interviews. Every single word that Rachel Zegler or anyone else in the cast says will be dissected by fans and critics alike. At this point, the backlash is so intense that no amount of PR spin is going to turn things around. So, what's next? It's hard to see a version of this Snow White remake succeeding. Disney keeps digging itself into deeper holes with these live-action reboots, and unless they shift gears toward crafting new, diverse stories, they'll continue to face this same backlash over and over again. What do you think? Can Snow White be saved, or is it already too far gone? Let me know your thoughts, and if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to like and subscribe.